Hi, welcome to the Chapter 1 notes video. So, as far as the class goes, we're going backwards a little bit in your book and going back to chapters 1 and 2. So, we started where we did last week because I thought it was important to start the class with an understanding of why it's so important that we get to know families, and because that gave you some context for starting off your course spanning project by interviewing families and kind of knowing what you were looking for, and just so really diving into culture and, like I said, why it's important to get to know those families. But now we're going to go back a little bit and talk about some theories that help us understand families. So now that we're getting to know them, let's really understand, right? So today we're going to look at some major theories that help us understand families, especially in the early childhood context. These theories give us tools to see how children grow, how families function, and how we as educators can support both children and families. So let's get started. So, by the end of this chapter, you should be able to describe how theories connect to family life, explain how they help us understand family dynamics, and think about the ways families grow and develop over time. Most importantly, you'll see how these theories apply directly to your work with young children and their families. There are many theories about families, but we're going to focus on six: the bioecological model, the family systems model, the family systems theory, functionalism, conflict theory, symbolic interactionism, and psychological perspectives. And each one of these gives us a different lens to look at families and children. And just like the theories we talked about when you took Introduction to Child Development and some theories we've talked about in other classes, no single theory explains everything, but together they give a much fuller picture. So we kind of draw from each of these theories and perspectives. So the biological systems theory is Brofenbrenner's model, and it reminds us that children are influenced not just by their families, but by schools, peers, communities, and even broader cultural and political systems than that. For example, a parent's workplace stress can impact the child at home. Unfortunately, it's just how it's going to be. Even if a parent does everything they can to hide that stress comes out somehow. Stress comes out in our bodies a lot of times. So in early childhood education, we need to consider these multiple layers, not just what happens in the classroom, but also what's happening at home, in the community, and in society. It's hard to shield kids from all news, or from, depending on the community they're in and how tight knit it is, or what might be going on, from something bad that could be happening in their community, or even um, on a state or global level. Um, it's hard to protect them sometimes from everything that's going on, and they can see and feel that. Just like, I mean, I think of we as I'm recording this, it's right around the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and kids kids see little snippets of that on the news, or did when it was happening. Just big big stories that kids can see and have questions about, and could be scary for them, things like that. So the family systems theory views the family like a system where all members are interconnected. If one part of the system changes, it affects everyone. For young children, this means their behavior and development can be closely tied to the health of family relationships. Boundaries, like respecting parent and child roles, are important for children to feel secure. So, as educators, understanding family systems helps us know how to support both children and their families. Functionalists see the family as serving important roles for society, things like teaching values, passing down culture, and preparing children for adult life. In early childhood, families are the first teachers. They introduce children to language, to social norms, and to routines. And as educators, when we recognize this, it helps us work with families as partners in children's learning. We do need to recognize that families are the first teacher. We get them part of the day, but their number one teacher and the first teacher they ever have is their family. Conflict theory focuses on power and inequality within families. For example, arguments over chores or financial stress can affect children. In early childhood settings, we might see how these family struggles show up in a child's behavior. Understanding this reminds us to avoid judgment and instead think about the broader context that families are facing. Interactionists emphasize the meanings families give to roles and relationships. For example, the word parent doesn't always mean biological mother or father. It could be a grandparent, foster parent, or just about anyone else. For children, the meaning of family is based on the roles people play in their lives. So, bringing it back again to what that means to us as educators, it's important that we respect and validate every child's unique family structure. And one of the ways we can do that often is just with the language that we use. Talking about parent, family, getting to know our kids and who's at home, and trying not to use those general roles. A very simplistic example to me is like muffins with mom and donuts with dad. Those are great activities, wonderful ways to get families on your campus, at your school, and involved. But think how isolating that is, though that language is to a child whose mom has died or left or even is deployed, um, or is incarcerated or just can't be there for some reason. Um, some kids will be able to easily go, okay, my grandma. But for some kids, that's just painful language, and the same with dad. So if we can find, I know the alliteration of muffins with mom and donuts with dad is great, but if we can come up with some other ways to make it know that, you know, any woman in their life who celebrates and loves them, of course, we know when we say muffins with mom that they're welcome, but let's find language that lets the kids know that they can invite any woman in their life who loves and celebrates them, or any male in their life who loves and celebrates them. And just little things like thinking like that, just little slight little shifts can make a big impact. Okay, finally, psychological theories like those of Freud, of Erikson, Piaget, and Vygotsky, who we've all studied before, help us understand how children grow and learn. Freud focused on early experiences. Erikson showed us that development continues throughout life. And Piaget explained how children think at different ages. And then Vygotsky highlighted the importance of learning through relationships. And all of these perspectives remind us that families play a central role in shaping development, and that children grow best when caregivers and educators work together. So that is it for your chapter 1 slides. I hope these were helpful for you.